Hi, this is Mrs. Hall, and we are going to be starting a new unit on behaviorism, and we're going to start with a concept known as operant conditioning, also known as reinforcement theory. So we're going to be talking in this lesson, lesson 3.1, and I'm going to call it A, about reinforcement, what it is, and the positive and negative reinforcement and the difference between those. In lesson 3.1b, we'll talk more about punishment and what's known as positive punishment and negative punishment. So let's talk about what operant conditioning is. This really is a concept in which we come to acquire behaviors based on their consequences. So if you look here, we're talking about a type of learning in which the frequency or how often a behavior occurs depends on the consequence that follows the behavior. Now, what I want you to understand is that the word consequence, we have the connotation that that word always means something negative. But what you have to understand is that consequence, by definition, just means something that follows a behavior. So consequences can be both positive or they could be negative. So the frequency of a behavior will increase if the consequence is reinforcing to the subject. So if we want a behavior to occur more frequently, we're going to reinforce that behavior. But if we want a behavior to decrease or to go away, then we're either going to ignore it or not reinforce it, or we're going to punish it somehow. So we start with reinforcement. And then, like I said, in the next lesson, we'll move into punishment. So let's look at what reinforcement is. Reinforcement is any sort of a consequence, anything that comes after a behavior that's going to cause that behavior to be more likely to occur again. It's going to strengthen a behavior. So if we want something to happen again, we're going to reinforce it. This is always something good for the person performing the behavior. Two different types of reinforcement. The first one is positive reinforcement. Now, the word positive doesn't mean good. You've got to understand, you've got to think a little bit differently on this. The word positive means adding something into the organism's environment. So we are giving something, and when it comes to reinforcement, we're giving something that that organism wants in response to the behavior that they perform. So a positive reinforcement, like all reinforcement, is going to strengthen a behavior. So we're going to give something that the organism wants. So as you look at the picture on the bottom left, you've got the dog there. So we're going to give the dog a treat because a dog likes a treat, and we're adding that into his environment. On the right-hand side, you see money being given for good grades. So we're going to give something, add something into the environment that the person wants as a positive reinforcer. And both of these things, whether it's a treat for a dog or money for a human, it's going to make the behavior more likely to happen again. So this dog is going to be given a treat whenever he obeys, making that obedience more likely to occur again. And this young man is going to be more likely to earn A's in his classes because he gets something that he wants as a result. Negative reinforcement is a little bit tricky. Now, what you've got to understand is that negative reinforcement is still going to strengthen a behavior. It's still something that the organism wants. Only instead of giving something, we're going to take something away. We're going to remove something from the organism's environment. So instead of adding in money or adding in a treat or adding in attention, we're going to take away something that the organism does not want, still strengthening the behavior. It's kind of like avoiding a punishment. So if you look at the top right corner, you see that a person who has a headache is going to take aspirin to relieve the headache. It's going to make that headache go away, and the behavior of taking the aspirin is going to be strengthened. So when I've got a headache coming on, I'm going to take the aspirin because it will remove the negative, the unwanted headache. When it comes to the dog here, we take away something that the dog doesn't want anyway. So when we're pushing the dog down, the dog doesn't like that. So when he stops jumping, we let go and he's good. And he will learn to not jump. Now, what you have to understand is negative reinforcement is not bad. You can't think of it as bad. It's as removing something from the environment. It still strengthens a behavior. I want you to think about, why do you obey your parents? You obey your parents to avoid getting in trouble. You're negatively reinforced for the behaviors that you do. Well, let's think about coming home on time. You don't come home on time because you want to and because your parents are going to give you $100 if you come home on time. No, you're going to come home on time when they tell you to, because you're going to avoid having some sort of a punishment. If you came home late, your parents would take away your car or your phone, or you'd be grounded in some way or whatever. So you're going to come home on time to avoid having that negative response, that negative consequence. Both of them are good things. Both of them are going to strengthen a behavior, making it more likely to occur again in the future. Here's another chart here that you can look at. Positive reinforcement is something that is desirable. It's given to, the stimulus is presented into the organism's environment, making the behavior increase. Negative reinforcement is going to take away something that the organism does not like. Taking something away is negative. Reinforcement is increasing a behavior. So we'll talk more about this when we return to class.